The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Don't be scared now, but it looks like you just wandered straight into U-Mind country. That's U-Mind, short for unaffiliated mind games, and you ain't never gonna be the same again. Brace yourself. It's time for a red-hot truth injection. Oh yeah! That's right, bitch. We're rounding up the sheeple and shaking them awake. U-Mind, too damn bad. We're gonna set fire to the wool over your eyes. Feel the burn, baby. Hot damn. We're toppling the lies of the lamestream media, one by one. Woo-wee! Watch them bad boys fall. Hey, Universe A, this is Universe B calling, and we're gonna tear you a new one. You mind?
Okay, hey everybody, it's me, Napoleon Doom again, and I am here with our very special guest, Scott Lost. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Now, Scott is a former professional wrestler. He is the founder of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and a 5-time World Tag Team Champion. He is currently one of the founding members of the Accidental Aliens, and he serves as both artist and co-plotter for Second Shift and the Wanderers of Melisanda. So, wow, that's quite a resume there. So, my goodness. But I want to start by talking a little bit about your past because your background's so unique. Now you're my age, so I'm guessing that you probably grew up around the time of Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yes, yeah. Those were the guys that I was watching initially when I first started watching wrestling, and there were guys like Bret Hart. He was in the Hart Foundation, and that was actually my favorite wrestler, even when he was in the tag team for whatever reason. And then as time went on, he became more prominent in the WWF and then WWE later on. So, so that's the time. Shawn Michaels and Rockers and all that.
Yeah. So now, what takes somebody from watching wrestling to actually want to get involved?
Well, I was so when I was a teenager, I don't know. I got a. Are we allowed to cuss on this?
You may cuss.
Oh, okay.
If it's too
well,
bad,
see,
I will bleep you.
I feel about cussing that I've asked about it. That's weird. I don't know. I got a weird stick up my butt about performing matches on my trampoline, and because I was watching so much wrestling, and in the 90s, wrestling was insanely popular.
Yeah.
So like the peak of wrestling in the 90s was like between 96 and 99. It was really nuts. And so when I was probably about 17, 18, I wanted to start performing matches on my trampoline. I had a bunch of friends that also liked wrestling. So I would actually write the matches and we'd perform them on my trampoline. And at one time, one of my friends, he brought his best friend who I'd never met before, and he actually wanted to be a pro wrestler as well. Or he wanted to be a pro. I didn't want to be a pro wrestler. I actually just liked performing the matches. And but I met him, and he actually wanted to be one. And he had we did some matches, and then we found a flyer, or his girlfriend found a flyer to UPW, Ultimate University, and that's like the same place that John Cena trained at, and up in LA.
Wow.
And like, you gotta come with me. And so we went up and we watched a practice, and it was a lot of guys that were our size and our age. And we're like, oh, we can actually do this. Like, cause everyone on WWE, they were like over 6 foot on tons of steroids. At that time in the 90s, steroids were rampant. And, so we saw a bunch of guys our size and our age, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. So we started training, and like 6 to 8 months later, we were having matches. And it's usually about a year before you start having matches. So we started pretty quickly. We're pretty advanced.
What is the process, sort of from beginning to end, to entering the pro wrestling circuit? You kind of said you started doing matches. You went there. How does that go?
Well, you usually find a place to get trained at. Back in the day, a lot of times they would actually just throw you in the ring.
Oh, wow.
And the old vets. This was like way back in the day, like maybe 70s or something
Mm-hmm.
early, and they would just kind of like rough you up to make you to see if you would be tough enough to keep having matches. But by the time I started training, it was like, no, you just go to school and you get taught to how to have matches, perform moves, stuff like that, and bump in the ring. And so Ultimate University was UPW, and they had their own shows, so we started wrestling on their shows. And then at that point, other smaller companies, if you showed any promise, they'd actually start reaching out to you about having matches on their shows.
Hmm.
So before we knew it, um, we actually became a tag team. Me and the guy that I had met and was wrestling with on the trampoline, and so we actually became a tag team. We were actually pretty popular right out of the gate. We were um, like pretty innovative and like high flying and stuff. So we're entertaining to watch. So we're all over the place like pretty quickly.
And then you eventually went on to you founded Pro Wrestling Guerrilla.
Hmm.
So that that's amazing. Now, what made you want to found your own wrestling? Is it a federation? Is it a
Yeah.
yeah?
Promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Promotion is usually the word. Federation is another term for it. It was more so we just needed more places to work.
Mm.
At the time, there wasn't a lot of places. There would be small companies that would kind of pop up, and then they would last a couple of months, and then most of the time the promoters realized we're not going to really make a lot of money on doing this, and then they would close down. So we needed more places to work. So we figured, me and a lot of the top guys in SoCal, um, at that point, by the time PWG came around, I was one of the top guys in SoCal, and so me and five other members. So there's PWG, there's the six of us, the PWG six, and so we formed Pro Wrestling Guerrilla just to have another place to work, and it was really popular. It kind of became an all-star show because a couple of the guys that were booking, it's like they only wanted super high-end talent on the
Mm-hmm.
shows. And then we started flying guys in from the East Coast. So at that time, that was pretty rare. So a lot of the shows in SoCal, it was just Southern California wrestlers or NorCal wrestlers coming down to SoCal, and those were the majority of the matches. So to get like a East Coast guy was a big deal, and we started getting a lot of East Coast guys in because we knew, being wrestlers, some of the other wrestlers knew them,
Yeah.
and so we kind of had a bit of a deal, and we would fly them in, and then they would kind of cut us a little bit of a deal to wrestle out here. But then before we knew it, we are making good money on the shows, and so that was like less of an issue, and we all kind of got a bump in pay as well, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the whole basis of us starting our own Fed.
Yeah. That's I think that's fantastic. And then you went on to eventually become the five-time PWG Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Tag Team Champion.
Yes,
So.
yeah, I was a tag team specialist. I don't, my brain always worked like in singles I was good too,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of liked organizing chaos, so like figuring out what people were doing, like multiple people doing at once. Like,
Yeah.
okay, what is this doing? And my brain just worked well at that. So I spent a lot of time in the tag teams, and towards the end of my career, I was spending a lot of times in singles. I was mostly doing singles.
Yeah. Do you have a signature move?
A lot, yeah, I have a lot. That was one thing I think that I was known for. I was pretty innovative. I would think of like really cool. So in wrestling terms, spots.
Mm-hmm.
Spots are series of moves, like a chain of events, and I was really good at creating good, like unique chain of events. And so those are spots. So I would do a lot of cool spots, and I had a lot of cool signature moves. And my finisher was the Big Fat Kill, which is named after Frank Miller's Sin City
Yeah.
series. So, which is like a spinning hook kick to the face, and usually they'll be on their knees, but then sometimes I would do it while they were standing. So that
Huh.
was like that was my finisher. And then my signature move that I would hit every single match was the Superman spear, and essentially it would be the guy would be in the turnbuckle in the corner, and I would run from the far turnbuckle to him, and I would basically jump off from the middle of the ring. I
Mm-hmm.
would just run, jump, and I would shoot like a torpedo into their midsection while they were in the corner, excuse me. So that was my signature move. That wasn't my finisher.
Yeah. Wow. So,
That's cool.
taking names like the Big Fat Kill from Frank Miller's Sin City, it sounds like you were always pretty invested in comics.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I was actually inventing moves based off of stuff I would see in comics and cartoons and stuff like that. Like I had this it's like a I would call it the bat stomps. It was like these foot stomps out of the corner. So like if someone shot me into the turnbuckle, they would run at me and I would put my back on the top turnbuckle and I would lift my feet up in the air, and so I would put them on their chest and they would I would basically jump on their chest from a standing position out of the corner,
wow.
and I would land on them and then I would roll off. And it was based off of the intro to Batman the Animated Series, where did you watch Batman the
Oh,
Animated Series?
absolutely. Yeah, it was my favorite. I never missed it.
So the opening scene of the intro is the two robbers on the roof, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're like looking around, and then they see Batman, and he like pounces on one of them, and then he flips and he rolls off.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, oh, that's so cool. Like, how would I do that? So I figured out to do those bat stomps out of the corner, those foot stomps out of the corner. And so I would land on their chest and I would roll off of them. And that became like a big signature move.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah,
That's
comics were always ingrained.
that's pretty fantastic. Now, at what point did you decide that you were going to dedicate yourself to your art and your comics as opposed to wrestling?
The 10-year mark. So I was training myself from a young age to be a comic book artist, like ever since I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to the point where during summer school, or not summer school, when during summer break, I wouldn't let myself go play outside until I finished one page of art, because I knew that comic artists had to finish one comic book a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was, I think, back then it was like 20 to 23 pages story a month. So I was like, I basically have to do one page a day. And so even as a kid, I was like training myself to be a comic book artist. But then my teenage years, that's when wrestling got really popular and I was obsessed with it. And so when I was like 19 and 20, or like 17 through 19, that's when I was really obsessed. And then um, I was just like, okay, I started the training and I was wrestling by 20. So my family wasn't too happy about that, really. And, it's obviously not safe, and they're just worried about me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, look, I'm going to do this for a while until I love it. And even if I love it at 30, and if I'm not making a full-time living off of it, then I'll stop. And so at about 28 and a half, I was not in love with it anymore. I wanted to hang out in San Diego more. Most of the wrestling is based out of LA, like if
Mm-hmm.
you're in California. So like there's a couple here in San Diego, but not as much. So I'd be driving up to LA every weekend, and I'd rather stay in San Diego and hang out with my friends than go wrestle. So I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, you know what, fuck it. I said I would stop at 30. What's a year and a half? I'll stick it out. I'll make it to 30. Who knows? Maybe I'll fall in love with it again, or maybe I'll get a job. And turns out I did fall in love with it again, but that was because I changed the way I thought about matches. Like instead of trying to have the best match on the card, I was just trying to have fun. I was like, what do I want to do? What's fun to me? What would be interesting for me to do? So instead of having like a 20-minute indie classic match, I was having 10-minute matches, because I was like, I like TV style matches. I like fast, hit them hard, hit them quick
Mm-hmm.
matches. Just keep the action going. And so I started having TV style matches on the indies, and I was really enjoying myself. And fans started reacting to it, and so it was interesting. Like going on message boards, like towards the end of my run, I saw a lot of fans say, because they announced, like I initially didn't want to announce that I was retiring. I just wanted to do the last match and not tell anyone and just like stop wrestling.
Yeah.
Because that's what one of my old tag partners, that's what he ended up doing. And it was just such an interesting reaction to fans. They're like, where the hell did he go? Like, and so that for years they'd be like, hey, what's up with Bosch? Is he coming back? And so I always kind of liked that aspect of it. But a couple of my buddies, they were like, let's not do that, man. Like they deserve to know that you're stopping. And like that was, my partner was Chris Bosch. And they were like, that was Chris's personality. He was crazy. He just like disappeared, and it made sense. But for you, you're such like I was like a staple of SoCal wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just kind of like, they deserve to know that you're stopping. And so after I announced it, I was just like, oh, I want to see what people are saying. And a lot of people were saying like, well, it sucks because they're like, it really sucks because I'm really starting to enjoy his matches. You know, they've been really fun. And I was just like, oh, good. I'm glad, you know, that people are enjoying it, even at the end. And the thing that bothers me is like, I should have just been doing that the whole time.
Yeah.
I should have just been doing what I wanted to do the whole time instead of trying to have the best match. So, but another reason for wanting to stop wrestling and moving back into comics was I was getting into comics again, like towards the end of my wrestling career. And I have the ability to multitask, but when I'm trying to hit a goal, I need to concentrate all of my energy on it. So basically for 10 years, from 20 to 30, I started drawing again at 29, but I basically took a 10-year break from drawing. And was just focusing purely on wrestling and trying to succeed at doing that. So so like at 28 and a half, 29, I started drawing again. And that was, you know, taking my attention away from wrestling.
Yeah.
So
did you have a favorite comic book series or even cartoon series?
Yeah, I was a huge X-Men kid growing up. It was the best. My first comic ever was Alpha Flight 23. I believe it's number 23, where Snowbird and Wendigo are fighting on the cover. I got it from one of my classmates, and because he brought a bunch of comics to the classroom, and he was just like, "Oh, my uncle's Wills Portacio," and Wills was drawing X-Men at the time, and it's like Filipino culture. Like I don't think they're blood related, but it's like, oh, he's friend of the family, so he's an uncle, right? So anyway, so he had given my classmate a bunch of comic books. And so, you know, little kids, they don't have boundary issues or what's good taste, right? So I was just like, can I have one? And he goes, you could you could have Alpha Flight. But I was just like, oh, it's a comic book. And that very night, I asked my mom to take me to 7-Eleven and get some comics off the spinner rack. So I was looking for like X-Men, but all they had was like Excalibur. So I got Excalibur. I think it was number 3 or 4. It's like a chaotic cover where Nightcrawler's getting kicked in the butt. And like Arcade is in the bottom corner, like laughing and crying. So that was my first comic I ever bought. Yeah,
and
to answer your question, X-Men and Batman. Sorry, I get off on these tangents.
No, it's okay.
And then I was like, oh yeah, and then there was this and this, and I'm like, wait, that wasn't the question. So X-Men, and then for DC it was Batman.
Very nice.
I love Batman, Nightwing specifically from the Batman series.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love tangents actually because it gives me something to work with. The worst thing that can happen in one of these interviews is when you have a whole list of questions and someone's like, "Yep, oh yeah," and you're just like,
"Oh yeah, yeah,
okay."
No, I will keep talking. That's not a problem.
Yeah,
like we seriously could just delve into that, and like that could be the entire interview. Like we don't need. Like me mentally, I don't need a lot of questions. It's like I could dissect this one thing like forever. But yeah. So, yeah.
Now from that, did you develop an affinity for a specific artist?
Yes. Yeah. When I was a little kid, I loved classic X-Men classics because they had Art Adams covers, and Art Adams was my first favorite artist. Like he was the first guy that I was like, yes, like that's the guy. He's like the best guy. He's the best artist. And so I remember they had X-Men Classic #1 in a glass display case at Comics and stuff. Back in the day, it was Comic Castle. And so they had a glass display case, and they had X-Men Classic #1 with the Art Adams cover. And it was like, I think it was $10 or something like that. Maybe less, maybe $6 to $10, something like that. And so I was like, I have to save up to get that book. And I got it, and I was like looking through it, and I was so bummed out because the interior art was not Art Adams. And I like, why is the cover why does this art look so much better than what's on the inside? And so that really bummed me out. And then so that kind of, like, to this day, I don't like cover artists. Like I feel like you're like the fan. Okay, so if you know about it, it's not a big deal, right? Like when you see J. Scott Campbell, a J. Scott Campbell cover, you know J. Scott Campbell's not doing the interiors.
Yeah.
So, but if you have I don't know, if you have like, I think if the artist is really good on the inside, they deserve the right to have the cover. Like,
Mm.
I remember someone asked me once, they're like, "Oh, hey, do you need like a cover artist for your books?" And I'm like, "No, like I get to draw the covers because I did all the hard work on the inside. Why would I give you the best part of a comic book, when I just did all the hard work?"
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's kind of like my stance on it. And from that point forward, every time I bought a comic book, I would always open it first to make sure the cover art matched the interior art.
Yeah. That makes sense to
Yeah.
me. I think that's one of the reasons I really like Daniel Brenton, who did the Nocturnals.
Okay.
Every single panel is like an oil painting, and it's
Wild.
it probably takes like 2 or 3 years to complete a book, but
Yeah.
it and I was always like, that always was a pet peeve of mine too. Is like, well, I bought it because I wanted to look at this, and then that's not
Yeah.
consistent. So,
Yeah. That was like a heavy metal. Like my brother had heavy metal magazines
oh, I love
when I
that.
was growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of painted art on the interior, and it would blow my mind. I would be like, how long did it take to do this? And like, this artist is so amazing that every panel is like a finished painting. And so like even as a kid, I really appreciated that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, getting into comic books and coming up with your stories, did you sort of go it alone for a little bit? And how did that go?
Yeah, I attempted so when I was a little kid, I never finished one story. Like as much as I was training myself to be a comic artist, I had like comic ADD. Like I
Yeah.
had so many story ideas in my head. I would draw a few pages of one story, and then I would think of a completely different story, and then I would draw the cover for that story, and that cover would make me want to work on that issue. So I'd constantly be jumping back and forth uh, uh, between issues and stuff like that. But anyway, so in the 20s, fast forward to the 20s, I think, when was that? I think it was early on in my wrestling career. I actually did draw I think I drew for like 6 months, and it kind of divided my time a little bit. But I drew an issue of the second shift. And me and my writer, we actually refer that to issue zero because I started and I finished an issue all on my own. And after I'd finished the issue, I realized, oh, this story's terrible. Like, like the story wasn't good. And I was like, okay, I'm an artist. I am not a writer. Like, it was kind of like I had the basic ideas down, but
Mhm.
even then, it was just like, look, I'm untrained. I'm kind of like winging it. And at one point, I had a bank robber literally with a sack of money with a dollar sign on it running down the street, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Like, what's happening? So that was the first full issue I drew on my own and wrote on my own. And so I stopped after that because it
Yeah.
took me so long to draw the issue. I think I actually finished it in pretty decent time. It wasn't a month or anything like that. It was quite a few months,
Mhm.
but it was surprisingly fast for back then. And anyway, after that, I stopped. I stopped because I realized I had invested in so much time into this issue, and the story was crap. And I'm like, I'll never use this. Like the story's no good. And so until I was basically retiring from wrestling, I was kind of done. And then I actually met my writer through wrestling. He's actually a former pro wrestler as well. So we would always talk about like Bruce Lee, comics, sneakers, basketball, and wrestling. So we had a lot of stuff in common. And come to find out that he was a writer, and he would always try to get me to read his scripts, but they were always like about war,
Mhm.
and I'm not really into those types of stories. And I always felt bad because he would always give me crap. He'd be like, "I always send you stuff, you never look at it or whatever." And he goes, "I always look at your art." I'm like, "Well, you can just look at art. You don't have to read art.
Yeah.
It's look at it and like, hey, you've looked at it and you're done." It's like I have to read your entire script, and I'm like, and he goes, "Oh, fair enough." And I was just like, "How about this? Do you want to write my book?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay, let me see if you're good at it though. Let me see if I actually like your writing." And so him and another friend were both writers, and I sent them the same basic idea. Here are the characters. Here's what they're like. Here's their aspirations, their hopes and dreams. This is their personalities. Have them at a table in a diner, sitting and having a conversation. Just let me hear what that sounds like. Both of my writers did it, and my writer, he knocked it out of the park. The other guy, his heroes were not good, but his villain was really good. So he actually did some writing assists on the first story arc. just like helping out with the villain. So, but then after that, it was kind of like just my full time writer, E. Bronson. So he started doing everything after
Oh,
that.
yeah, very cool. So you're starting to come together with other people, and eventually you will go on to be one of the founding members of the Accidental Aliens. So how did that come to be?
It's actually from San Diego Comic Fest.
Oh, okay.
We met at Comic Fest. So I met the very first year I was there. I had my writer with me and another artist that I knew from wrestling. He happened to be there, and so I kind of just buddied up with them for the first year I was there. The second year I didn't. The space was really tight. It didn't make sense for my writer to be there. It was a really small room in the town and country. So I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to tell him to come down for this. Like, it's fine. And then the other guy I knew, he wasn't there that year, the second year that I had went. And so I actually had to talk to people around me, which was nice. And because it was such a small room, you can actually get to know people in the room.
Hmm.
And where I actually met you a
Yeah,
few years later.
you did.
So anyway, yeah, so I got to know this one guy, Arnie Gordon. And at the beginning, because it was multiple days, right? So one of the days I'm setting up for the day, and he comes over and he goes, "Hey man, I really like your work. I just wanted to come over and let you know that I think you have really worked nice art." And I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then so he goes and he sits down, and we had some time to just kind of like stand up and walk around because there'd be lulls in the room where no one would be there. So I got to go up and check his stuff out, and stuff was rad. I was like, "Oh man, this guy thinks my work's good. His work's really good." After the show was all over, I said, "Hey, are you local?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, pretty much almost like the large majority of us here are local." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was just like, "Hey, would you want to like hang out sometime and draw?" And I'm like, drawing's such a solitary thing. Like it would be cool to just like hang out at a coffee shop or something, or go to somebody's house and just like kick it and just draw and chat it up. And he said, "Yeah." And the person next to him was like, "Can I come?" And Kristen, what's her? Sirianne is what she goes by, like on the tables. So she wanted to hang out as well, and I was like, hell yeah, the more people, the merrier. And so we started hanging out, and she started inviting people, and before I knew it, we had like a little group of artists, and people would come and go. She eventually would drop off because she was concentrating on other stuff, and Arnie still comes and goes to this day. Like he's got other things going on, but basically every year I would meet another artist or two and kind of pick them up. Like, oh, you and I have the same sense of humor. We should hang out and draw together. It's like, okay, because like they kind of have a dark sense of humor. I have a dark sense of humor, and we just laugh it off and it's funny. So it's just like, okay, cool, yeah, let's hang out. So yeah, that's kind of how the Accidental Aliens started. I just started collecting people from San Diego Comic Fest, and the more we hung out, the more it was like I think I was the only one that was doing books. Like I was actually putting books out, and it's such a good feeling to put a book out.
Yeah.
That I wanted to feel the same thing. And so I was like, hey, let's do an anthology series. And we'll all have our own stories, and we'll get 6 pages each in a cover. And if you don't finish your story, it's no big deal because it's your own story. So if you don't finish, you're just not in the anthology, no big deal. And everyone's like, yeah, let's do it. So we set a date and we kind of set it up, and we do it annually now. This actually will probably be our last anthology, but we're going to be doing other series. So every March we'll do a Kickstarter from March to April, and then if the funds get raised, we'll put our anthology out, and we'll have it by May. And May is Free Comic Book Day, like the first week, right? So we'll have that out in time for Free Comic Book Day, and it sells pretty well. It's cool because I think fans are like, if I buy this anthology, I'm supporting all of you, not just one of you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what the draw is for those anthologies.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's pretty much how we started.
Oh, it's very nice. So you're basically ancient. I'm sorry, accident. I always say ancient aliens, and I know that you've heard me say that before. I don't mean to. The accidental aliens.
I like
The accidental aliens.
built up your heads. Everyone knows it, and those
It,
that don't know, it's denial.
yeah. They are a co-op of comic book creators, and they're really interesting. There's a lot of really interesting stories that have come out of those anthologies, and so are you thinking of taking those stories from those anthologies and turning them into series, or is it going to just be?
Yeah. So I actually already started doing that. Our 2017 and 2018 anthology, I did Wanderers of Melisande in it,
Mm-hmm.
and so I took those first 12 pages and I just drew 9 more pages and I released Wanderers of Melisande #1 on its own. So it's a 20-page story or 21-page story, and I'm going to continue it as a series. So, and then the third year, the 2019, was a creature feature, and technically I could have done more Wanderers because there's a lot of like bug people and dinosaur people in it.
Yeah.
So it worked perfectly, but I wanted to try something different. So I did a short story on the kaiju that appears in the second shift. Because what I've noticed at shows is people that pick up the second shift, they don't necessarily pick up the anthology, and people that pick up the anthology, they don't necessarily pick up the second shift. So I wanted some crossover. So I wanted to go like, okay, the second shift fans, if I tell them that the origin of the kaiju in issue #7 is in this anthology, they might pick it up. And so that was the hopes. Or people that picked up the 2019, if they liked it, I put in at the end of my story, continued in second shift #7.
Mm-hmm.
So that way I was trying to get that crossover. Um, and then this year's, it's a post-apocalyptic theme, and I actually wanted to give one of my oldest friends a crack at actually writing something. As long as I've known him, he said he's a writer, but he's never written anything. So
Yeah.
I wanted, yeah, I wanted to challenge him. He's a bit of a dark personality, a dark sense of humor, a very dark sense of humor, way worse than mine. And so I was like, hey, do you have a post-apocalyptic scene in your brain or a story? And he goes, no. I'm like, all right, well, and I proposed the idea to him. And so a little bit of time went by, we were hanging out, and he goes, give me a couple months. And I'm like, all right. So that's what I'm working on this year
Oh, wow.
is his story.
That's
Yeah.
great how it all comes together like that. So,
Yeah.
speaking of your stories, now you mentioned Second Shift. Let's talk a little bit about that. Now, Second Shift, we had mentioned it on our last podcast with Travis, is about working class superheroes.
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
no.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
oh no, I was going to say, your question, see your prior questions. I'm hopping back and forth. So that's what I do with my stories. But Travis, actually, he's planning on taking all of his stories from the
Mhm.
anthologies and putting it in one book. Yeah. So that's what he's actually going to do with his. So we are repurposing our anthology stories, me and him.
Yeah.
And so I don't know about anyone else. But anyway, sorry, going back to the
No,
second shift.
no. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the second shift. A lot of times in your superhero stories, say take Batman or Green Arrow, they're people of means. They're people who are very affluent, and yes, of course, they have lots of cool gadgets and super science and stuff like that, because they have millions of dollars at their disposal. And the
Right.
second shift crew is not like that.
No, they have a beater van that they go around and stop crime in, and it's a story of a minimum wage superheroes essentially, and that's kind of how I elevator pitch it. I need to find a better way to elevator pitch it, um, because when you hear that, you think, oh, they get paid minimum wage to be superheroes. No, that's not necessarily what it is. It is like the everyman. It's like they go to their normal jobs, and then at night the superheroes, they fight crime and everything. And so it's all about the balance of the 9 to 5 in superhero life. And so they don't have a Batmobile or anything like that. They don't have the means. There's 4 of them that live in a 3-bedroom apartment. They have a beater Toyota van that they fight crime in. And it was actually the van from one of my jobs. So I used to work at a job delivering lost luggage. And so we had these little beater Toyota vans from the 80s, and they like ran forever, but they're not the best looking van. Now I love them. I think they're a really good looking van because I draw it all the time. I could actually legit draw that van without looking at reference material. I've drawn it so much. But Yeah, it's fun. It's like a fun idea because I remember driving around in them to go to the airport to pick up lost luggage, and I was like, man, this van is such a piece of shit, but it just keeps going. It never stops, and you could fit like a lot of crap in it. So I really like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a,
Yeah.
it's definitely good for superheroing. So
Yeah, it's like incognito,
yeah,
Um, and I actually want to buy one, like a real one, so I can use it for reference photo, like to get certain angles and stuff. Like
yeah,
I'll do an interior shot. That's the one thing is I don't have the interiors down necessarily, and so like no one else is gonna notice. But sometimes I draw certain things different in the van, and it's just like, man, I would love to just have a van and then just take my own reference photos when I'm doing certain angles or whatever.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
I think
they're crazy expensive. It's kind
yeah.
of weird.
Oh,
They're ma- yeah, they were made in the 80s. I think that van is from 84 to 88,
wow.
and like if you want one in good condition, it goes for 4 grand. It's like, what? This is a how many years is that? What is that?
Yeah,
Almost 40. So
it's
like 30 35 years,
because now it's
you know?
vintage. So yeah,
It's just because the engine they just run forever.
yeah.
Like they never break down. So weird.
Yeah. I think you're probably okay on drawing the backgrounds inside the van differently. One thing I've noticed in rewatching Scooby Doo, the inside of that van changes. Like sometimes they have a stove back there, and sometimes they have cabinets and all sorts.
Is it
And
really?
yeah, and you're
Oh,
just kind of like, wow. So now it's like a motorhome. It's okay,
yeah.
good.
I mean that makes sense too, though. Like they live out of that damn thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, but
You,
just the setup.
Atomo, I believe Atomo said that he never drew Kaneda's bike the same way. Like every time he drew it
Hmm.
different almost every. So I think about stuff like that, and I'm just like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Like if Atomo can get away with that, and his work is like has the most eyeballs on it,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like Kira's a classic. So if everyone can watch Akira or read Akira and then just kind of let go of the fact that Otomo draws the bike different almost every time he draws it, it's like, all right, well, I'm
Yeah.
nobody. I should get away with that. And people aren't paying attention that much.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're involved enough in the storyline, then that kind of
Yeah,
stuff doesn't really matter.
yeah.
So, now when you created these comic book characters, were you inspired by, did you feel there's maybe something lacking in other comic book characters that other heroes that you had seen and you wanted to create something different or?
No, not necessarily. It was more so like even as a little kid, I remember Stan Lee saying that you should create your own superheroes and tell your own stories. And like he would say in interviews, he goes, I don't know why these guys always want to draw my old characters and write stories about my old characters. Why don't they just make their own? And that always stuck with me, like ever since I was a little kid. And I was like, he's right. Why would I do that? I
Yeah.
love X-Men, but I don't know that I ever want to draw X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
I think the mainstream characters I would ever really want to draw is the Ninja Turtles. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like I've always wanted to have my own characters. These characters, Second Shift specifically, they've been around since I was in 7th grade. So, and as I've changed, they've changed. Like the main character, his job was my first job. He works at Fish World. John works. His code name is Light Shower, and he works at Fish World, and that's like Sea World.
Yeah.
So that was my first job. So. Um, And then one character, Eddie, he works at a comic book store. He doesn't get paid a lot of money working there. It's like sometimes you get paid in comics. Like if you're addicted to comics, you'll just rather I'll give you this much in cash or I'll give you this much in comics, and then
Mm-hmm.
you make your decision. Sarah, she's a waitress. Spree is her code name, and she's a waitress. She has super speed in her arms, so that helps with dishes and serving.
Yeah.
No,
Definitely.
no, she's not doing that not in front of people. But and Anne, she's the fourth main character, and she actually doesn't have a job. She's a college student.
Mhm.
So yeah.
It's a really interesting series. Which character would you say resonates most with you?
Uh, all of them do for different reasons because essentially they're all me. They're 4 different parts of my personality.
Mm-hmm.
John is the leader, but he's filled with self-doubt on his decision making. And Eddie is my youth and my sense of humor. So if you're reading Eddie, you're more than likely reading me. You're just like reading how I tell jokes and what I think is funny. And, enthusiasm for life. That's Eddie. And Anne is my analytical side and, just reasoning and all of that. And Sarah is she's the overbearing big sister. So, and she's very abrasive, harsh, critical. So they're just four different parts of me.
Mhm.
So, and which also makes them pretty easy to write. So when I read them, I can go, they wouldn't say that, and my writer, E. Bronson, he's super good. He's super good because he has no ego. He's not offended when I change a scene. He's not offended when I do rewrites. And he's just cool. He just knows, like, I know these characters better than he does, and he knows them very well at
Yeah.
this point. He knows them very, very well. So
It's good when you find somebody who you can work with like that, where it's not a constant clash.
yeah, I'm so lucky because I don't know any other way.
Yeah.
I've never worked with anyone else. The other writer, Bob Ramos, he was good for the brief time that he was there, but he would kind of like throw ideas out more than anything, and he would do some dialogue for the villain, but the villain's dialogue was very sparse.
Mm.
So, but it was usually actions and scenes and stuff like that. So he was good with that. So there wasn't a lot of back and forth there. And yeah, so Ed E. Bronson, he's fantastic. He's just so easy to work with.
Very nice. Now, you said that cartoons and comics influenced your wrestling style, but do you think perhaps some of your wrestling has influenced the scenes, especially the fight scenes that you draw?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm huge into choreography because of pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is fight choreography pretty much. So that's when I do fight scenes, it's like, okay, well, how would, if someone did this, where would their body position be? How would the person react if they were hit? How would they turn? So it definitely affects the fight scenes, and it's actually affecting how I'm drawing now. Like it's I'm thinking more about what I'm doing. Like for instance, when I first started wrestling, I was trying to emulate my favorite wrestler, Bret Hart. I was doing a lot of stuff the way he was doing it. And so when I would move a certain way, I was moving like Bret Hart. But after a while, it was just how I moved. But then after a while, I was like, my body doesn't feel like that's what I want to do anymore. Like I want to do it this way. It's not how Bret would do it, but it feels better, and I think it looks better. And then so I started developing my own style. And I think that's what's happening in my art right now. I think, I said Art Adams was my first favorite artist. My second and lifelong favorite artist is Jim Lee. And so I think I have a tendency to draw stuff that I think that's how Jim Lee draws it. And like I've watched so much of his work that like I mimic his line style or whatever as much as I can. And also to another degree, like J. Scott Campbell and sometime like Travis Charest or something like that. So, but now I feel like the same part of my wrestling career where I was like, okay, I'm doing this stuff like Bret. Well, now I'm doing stuff like me. Like I was taking stuff from like martial arts movie instead of like everyone was just watching each other's wrestling matches, right? Or old wrestling matches. So they were it was like cannibalizing, like everyone was just taking from the same pool. And after a while, I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, what are other ways I could look at this? So I started watching like martial arts movies. So I started taking stuff from martial arts movies. And so it kind of changed the way I wrestled completely. And so I would still have those elements of Bret in there, but there would be a lot of stuff around it where it would be integrated. Like the martial arts side would be integrated. And it helped. I was taking like judo, and so I was having, and like I took Taekwondo when I was younger, so I had a lot of martial arts influences already. So now with my art, I felt like for quite a while it's just like I'm emulating my favorite artists, Jim Lee, J. Scott Campbell, Travis Charest, and now it's like I'm turning to something else. It's like I need to find inspiration elsewhere, and so like now I'm looking at a lot more anime and manga,
Hmm.
and it's like this is it feels like a parallel to when I started integrating like martial arts into my wrestling, and it's like changing the way I'm drawing certain things like movement. Like I'm really trying to focus on movement right now, on certain, like especially second shift, and especially well, and also with, so basically both of my titles,
Yeah.
Wanderers of Melisanda, it's manga influenced.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a mixture of Avatar and Saturday morning cartoons from the 80s and a little bit of Disney. So
Hmm.
that's kind of feel of that book. It's like a complete opposite of the second shift. So second shift is so American comics dominated that I was like, I need a break.
Yeah.
I can't fucking draw any more buildings. I don't want to draw any more buildings. Another title. So I was like, okay, they're on a heavily deserted area planet that also has a lot of, in certain areas, and then other areas there's a lot of brush and trees and plants, all this stuff. And you know what? I'm not going to draw buildings traditionally. They're going to be weird, like hodgepodge, like igloo, type things.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to draw stuff the way I want to draw it in this. And there's not going to be like a strict rule, you know. So it's just completely different than what I was doing or am doing in second shift. So,
Yeah.
but I'm finding like now that I'm integrating more manga into the second shift, it's like the Wanderers in second shift, they're getting closer and closer in style. It'll never be completely there because when I draw Wanderers, it's a conscious effort to do it in a manga, like manga Saturday morning cartoon style.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that's I can't even remember your question. I hope that so I just
Yeah.
started rambling.
Well, that's no, I did want to start getting into talking about the Wanderers of Melisanda, and that one's really interesting. You can definitely see the manga influence in it. I feel like it's got sci-fi, it's got dinosaurs. I feel like maybe just because the planet colonization, you've got a little bit of like aliens thrown in there. There's just a lot to offer in that series. So walk us through the story a little bit as much as possible without giving anything away. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So 1,000 years in the future, we start colonizing other planets. We come across the planet Melisanda, where the dinosaurs of that world survived and evolved. The meteor never hit, and yeah. So the humans at that point were colonizing other planets, like I said, and so we touch down there. So it's about two dominant species trying to coexist on one planet,
Mhm.
and it never works out. So
No.
yeah,
But do you
it's
have a
hard for people to get along.
yeah, it's hard for people to get along, and then people and dinosaurs, it doesn't always work out like in Dinotopia. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so I
So another that's kind of like my slightly longer pitch when I tell people about it. But if people are like they want something super duper fast, I'll just tell them um, Avatar: The Last Airbender meets He-Man and Dino Saucers.
oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite dinosaur?
I do not. I don't have a
Oh.
favorite. Triceratops. I guess that's like I think that is my favorite dinosaur, but it feels so. It doesn't feel cool, you know.
Mm.
Like it feels like well, everyone knows what a Triceratops is.
Man,
I'm like, yeah, but
I don't know. Have you seen
he
Land
horns
Before
on its face.
Time? Sarah's the coolest.
Yeah, Sarah is the coolest. I
Yeah.
like Ducky too. Ducky was super rad.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I love dinosaurs. Like the messed up part is I don't know a ton about them, but everyone like that I'm super close with knows that I love dinosaurs
mhm.
and just like I just like them. I like them like I like dogs,
Yeah.
except for dogs wouldn't eat us.
Well, if given the
Well,
chance.
yeah, yeah,
There's
answer
some who
to it.
might.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now again, your favorite character from Melisanda.
It'd be Mars.
Mars.
Mars would probably be my favorite. So the main characters are Lee and Mars and their pet. He's like their dog slash horse.
Hmm.
Charlie was actually the name of my Dachshund that dog died like quite a while ago.
Oh,
But so that was the name of my first dog, and he's a giant roly poly
yeah.
in the store, not
He,
in real life.
he's actually on the
Uh,
cover, right?
yes,
Yes.
yeah. So another element to Wanderers, and it talks about it in the first issue. So it's not too much of a spoiler. Um, but if you don't want to hear this, fast forward it like 30 seconds. So on the ship, so much time has passed that all the DNA that they were able to save from Earth, they're inside of the ships. But so much time has passed, some of the files have gotten corroded and distorted, and as it has history, because so much time has passed along, that the insects from Earth that we start repopulating the planets with, they're either bigger or smaller or like nowhere close into size where they were. So that's why Charlie is the size of like a horse,
Yeah.
because a lot of the insects are massive.
Well, that's good for them because back in the day, the insects were. They say that the only reason they can't do that now is because the atmosphere has changed and their exoskeletons would crush them. But you used to have like dragonflies that were like 6 feet across and stuff like that.
Oh, shit.
So I may be
Yeah.
exaggerating in the
I-
size, but pretty big.
Like
They,
you think about how much of the stuff that's extinct, like how much of that stuff would have killed us.
yeah,
So
yeah,
uh,
absolutely. So it's definitely an interesting concept to think about for a story. So very
I
nice.
did get a bigger reaction when I pitched the two series for Wanderers. Second Shift is very hard to pitch to people,
Mm,
just because we're in such a superhero dominant medium.
yeah.
You know, it's moving away from it now. Like it's not as dominant as it used to be. But I think for the majority, when people read indie books, they're looking for something else. You know, like if they want their superheroes, they'll usually go to the big two.
Hmm.
And like not even Image Comics really has superheroes anymore, which bums me out because I was an Image kid. I was first a Marvel kid, but especially in my young teen to teenage years, it was like Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane,
Yeah.
you know. And so once they created Image, I was like, I'm going with them, you know.
Hmm.
And so I think I read X-Men for like one more year after they all left, and the art was not up to par. Because they were rock stars.
Yeah.
So I fall to Image. I think I own the first like 3 years of Image Comics, like everything. So multiple issues on a lot of them too, sadly. Um, so crap. What was my point? Why did I bring that up? I
Well,
brought that
you're
up for.
you're talking about it's difficult to pitch second shift.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, but like that was the second wave of superheroes that I really liked. I liked the Image characters more than I liked DC when I
Hmm.
was younger. Like, oh, these characters are really cool. Like, I really loved the Wildcats. I thought the Wildcats had an amazing story. I looking like at the time, I thought the writing was good. I know a lot of people complain about it, but I was really intrigued with the characters, their origins, and everything like that.
Yeah.
Same with Savage Dragon, Spawn. It's just like beautiful art and like, you know, so that's kind of what made me want to do that. So anyway, but I feel like Wanderers is the title that's more easily pitchable, and people have a tendency to pick that up, like especially if they just kind of want one thing. Because like I actually do a second shift bundle pack where you get like all the issues for like $25. You get the first trade paperback and issues 6, 7, 8 for $25. It's a good deal, and then I'll include the single issues from the trade as well. And so that will get people. It's like, well, I'm getting more bang for my buck.
Hmm.
But Wanderers, just the pitch, you go, I do that 45-second pitch that I had done, and people hear humans, dinosaurs trying to coexist, and they're like, I could see it in their eyes, like, oh, that sounds really cool.
Hmm.
So I really want to this year, I want to get back to that series. I'm going to do, me and my writer just finalized the second issue, dialogue. So I'm finishing up the 2020 anthology for Accidental Aliens. I have to do the basic lettering for Second Shift 9, and then Tristan from the Accidental Aliens, he's gonna do like the fancy lettering, like
Oh,
the sound effects and stuff like that.
very cool.
And then so once I finish with the basic lettering from issue 9, that's when I'm gonna hop back on Wanderers. So it's tough. It's tough juggling all these, but it's fun.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like you're super passionate about it. That
I am. Love it.
yeah.
I think about it pretty much all day. Like that's all I want to do with all of my time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's very inspiring to me. I think that the passion part is the part that wanes for me. So it's
Mm.
just the having to perform for people and yeah.
It's
Anyway.
tough. It's tough. Yeah. It's like I find because I was doing the first 5 issues of Second Shift
Mhm.
took me forever. Like I have it. I have a spreadsheet actually. I don't know where I have it. I have it somewhere. I have a spreadsheet because I found the release dates because I have them on the inside of the single issues.
Mhm.
Like, okay, issue 1 came out on this month of this year, and then the second one came out this month this year, and then so I figured out how long each issue took me to do, and it's crazy because I think 2, 3, and 4 were my fastest.
Hmm.
Like, I think I did actually I think I did issue 1 and 2 the first year I started drawing comics, and then I did 3, 4, and 5 all in 1 year.
Hmm.
So that doesn't feel right. I think it was like a 3-year process for 5 issues
Hmm.
because, like, much like my characters, this comics is my second shift. I have a full time job with the government, so it's like I, I get it done as much as I can. So
Right.
I have 2 jobs basically. I have my government job, and then as soon as I'm off, I'm home drawing, and so I spend 40 hours a week drawing comics. So, but anyway, I think yeah, the first story arc was like a 3-year process, and it was just like I don't want to do another big story. I told my writer,
Mhm.
I'm like, we need duns and duns. We need stuff that's going to wrap up in one issue because my brain was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't draw this character, this villain anymore. I've drawn him for 3 years. Like I want to draw other people. So issues 6, 7, and 8 are all one and done, one shots.
Yeah.
And so you get to read the story and finish the story. And so I'm able to introduce more villains into the series, into the world. And so we're like rounding the world out more, much more quickly. But now I'm getting quicker. So issues 9 and 10, it's a 2-part story. 11 and 12 is a 2-part story. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like those will be fun. And it's introducing more characters. Like, I think I have like 4 more characters, 4 more villains that I want to introduce. Um, so it's kind of like we're getting there. So I don't need to try to push the villains out so quickly.
Mm.
Um, but that's when I started doing Wanderers because you gotta change it up or else you're going to burn yourself out,
Right.
and that's what affects the passion of it all, I think.
Mhm. Mhm. Now I know that I had talked to you before, and you said that you had learned little tricks to sort of speed up your artwork that, like concept
Yes.
artists use. Can you divulge some of those, or those trade secrets?
No, yeah, I always tell people about it. It's I call it the Slack method. It's the Scott Lost advanced comic method or cartooning method. It so I'm sure other people do this too. I was not a freaking genius. I didn't not the first person to think of this, but I started working digitally, and instead of working on one page at a time, so I don't know what your process is. Do you thumbnail out your entire issue,
Yes.
or what do you do? Okay, so I will thumbnail. I usually thumbnail out the whole issue first, and then start working on the pages. And then for a little bit, I stopped doing that, and I started doing like thumbnails for like 5, and I'm like, oh, I want to start drawing these, so I just start drawing the pages, and so that's problematic, especially the way me and my writer were originally doing it. He would wrote prose style, he wasn't writing it comic book style,
Mm.
so I would read his script and I would visualize panels, so I would doodle on the script the panels, and it became problematic because one of the issues was like 27 pages. I was like, dude, we need to cut some of this shit. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not 7. And so I was like, you need to start working comic method. I'm like, we can't do prose anymore. It's killing my time frame. Anyway, fast forward, I started working digitally, and so I started laying out all the panels. I created a template where you have 8 pages on one page, and so I was thumbnailing all of the pages out on this one page, and then so it's about essentially 2.5 pages of that, because you get like about 20 to 24 pages or whatever per issue. So I would thumbnail them all out, and instead of working on one page at once, I'd work on 8 pages at once. So the thing that I found was slowing me down was being stuck doing something you don't feel like doing that day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another part of comics that wears on you, that breaks you down, is like, okay, I don't know if you ever have this. Like, today I do not feel like working on backgrounds. I just want to work on people.
Yeah.
And some days you're like, I can work on all the backgrounds. Like I'm a freaking background artist
It
today,
gets
right?
meditative at a certain point. Just window after window.
Absolutely. So with the Slack method, there is no waste of time. Like, there is no delay in what you're doing. So if today you only felt like drawing people, you have 8 pages to draw people. So you just go from page to page. So digitally, I could zoom in on the thumbnail and just start drawing one of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Just working on, I don't like that composition. Let me work on the composition. Oh, let me work on their form or whatever. And if I feel like, man, my form, my anatomy, my foreshortening is really strong today, I'll go through the pages and just do all of the figure work. And then so days where I feel like detailing, I can go in there and detail. But I've drawn my characters for so long that it's easy for me to draw them at pretty much any angle. So it's just like, all right, well, all the forms are there. It's like boom, boom, boom. You're banging it out. Before you know it, you have 3 pages done, almost done all at once, because you're working on multiple pages at once. And then, like I'd mentioned, the days where you feel like doing just backgrounds, you can work on all the backgrounds at once. What needs the most attention right now? What's going to take me longer on a day where I don't feel like doing backgrounds? That page, page number 5. Okay, that page that has a crazy background. All right, let me start going through it. And you start going through it, and before you know it, you have cut down on your time. So I was averaging 20 hours per page initially. And with the Slack method, I cut it down to 10. So I cut my time in half.
Nice.
By doing, yeah. So that's the major development in my drawing that helped out a lot. And the more recent one was actually something I heard from the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel on YouTube. It's Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg. They're both well-known comic creators. So they have this channel, and they were talking about how even if you did one panel a day all year long, you would have at least 55 pages done a year. Yeah. And I was like, that's more than I get done a year. And I was like, I need to do that. And I'm like, and that's a very conservative number. And if you really break it down, if you did do a panel a day, you would have somewhere close to 67 pages done a year. And I'm like, that's 3 books. Like, I need to do 3 books a year. So I actually started doing a panel a day now, and it's helped out quite a bit. I'm going through pages a lot faster, and it holds you accountable for something per day. Like days where you're like, I don't really have that much time. I just won't do anything today. Like, if you think about doing a panel a day, you don't think like that anymore. Or you'll get to a point where you're like, I'm in the groove today. It's not a limitation. You don't only have to do a panel a day. If you have the whole day and you're jamming, do as many panels as you want. But as long as you do 1 panel a day, at the end of the year, you'll end up drawing 3 books. So that's where my focus is right now. It's like, okay, make sure you do at least a panel a day. So, but then there's days where I'm jamming. I'm like, I'm doing at least a panel and a half, two panels, and so it's cool, and it's keeping me focused and on task.
Nice. That's always good to hear. Now, I'm going to be seeing you in small press at the Comic Fest this year, right?
Comic Fest is my favorite show.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy. Like the bigger shows are more problematic. Comic Fest, it's like your overhead's super low, especially since we're mostly San Diego based out here, right? Mm-hmm. Like at least I am. So it's like, all right, well, I don't have to worry about a hotel or like trying to bum a room or a couch from a friend up in LA.
Hmm.
Uh, like I said, the overhead's low, and then plus everyone there wants to buy comics or art or something. It's like San Diego, it's a little bit more difficult because you have people that are there just because, oh, it's Comic Con, it's the thing to do around this time of year. Unless you're in small press, which I learned this year or last year, we got small press for the Accidental Aliens for the first time, and we sold, oh shoot, I forgot the number. I think around 200 books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's freaking rad. So, um, it was just like, it's so different because if you do Artist Alley at San Diego Comic Con, I barely sell any books. I think I sell 16 books for the week,
Hmm.
and it's just like people aren't there for books; they're there for art. They're there for original drawings or prints.
Hmm.
When you're in Art Alley, that's all they're looking to do, and or looking to pick up. And like I do Artist Alley, and I'll do the prints.
Hmm.
Like I have a ton of prints, but it's not what I really like doing. I do prints because I know that's what people want to buy,
Right.
and comics fund comics for me. So like, or art funds comics for me. So the amount of money I spend on printing books and paying my colorist and letterers, my flatters, and it's like that money is it's all house money because every dollar I make off of a print or anything like that or off of a book, I have an account that's just for that. So it's just like if I'm to print something, or it's coming out of that fund, so it just constantly feeds itself. So my government job takes care of all of the bills, and my comic job takes care of itself. So it's but I really like doing small press or in Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con, because people are actually buying books. They were like excited when we would tell them about our books.
What are you most excited about this year at Comic Fest?
Selling books, like
Yeah.
that's the thing I'm most excited about. I like people that want to read my stories.
Yeah.
Like that really, it's really exciting to me. It's nice to make money off of this stuff, but the ultimate goal is for people to read these stories. Like that's the most important thing. It's like I feel like that's why we should all be making comics is we're storytellers. Like
Hmm.
that's what it was for wrestling with me and comics. That's who I am. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
It when I'm putting a match together, there's a story that I'm telling with each match. And same with comics. It's like I'm telling these stories because I think they're good. Like the best thing I ever heard a creator say, one of the best things was Eric Larson. He said, "You should be making the comic that you want to read. If you're not doing that, you're doing it wrong."
Right.
And I was like, "Yeah, fucking A. Like, why wouldn't you?" You know, it was like me with my wrestling. For years, I wasn't having the matches that I wanted to have. I thought I was having the matches that everyone else wanted me to have. And I figured it out at the end. And so with comics, it's like, I'm not going to do that. Like I'm telling the stories that I want to tell. And so with Second Shift and Wanderers, it's like, that's what I'm doing. I'm getting to tell the stories that I want to tell. And hopefully people out there want to read them too.
Yeah, yeah. It's really exciting because Comic Fest or actually Horrorgasm too. I met people who actually really liked my series, and I honestly
Right?
thought they were making fun of me because I'm just not used to
Why would
that.
you think that?
Like whenever somebody says like, "Oh my God, this is really good," I hear, "Oh, this is really good," and that kind of thing. So,
Well,
so it took me a
I think
second to
that's
go
a
like,
weird artist thing. I think uh, one of our studio mates, she would kind of do that. And we kind of talked her out of doing that. She would, tell people like, "Oh, this is my story and whatever. I really didn't like that I did this. I really didn't like how this look and came out." And I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you telling?" It's like, tell us. Tell us. You can tell us. Like,
yeah,
oh God, I really wish I could redo that. And then because we can relate, we know how she feels. We may not agree with her saying it. Like we might like, that looks fine. I don't know what you're talking about, but we understand the feeling, right?
hmm,
But if you're telling a potential customer that you don't like what you're trying to sell them, then why would they want
yeah,
it?
they don't want it.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
I always keep it internal, but it takes me a second to be like, Wait, really? Like this is actually
yeah,
happening?" But
yeah.
I do want to tell you if you want a free kind of exploration into the Lost Bread universe, there is Creeping Wave Radio, which is sort of the expansion of Lost Bread, and that's a podcast. It's the sister podcast to this one.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And so now you are part of the Lost Bread universe, which means that at some point, like you could get dragged in by demons or Soviet vampires, or you're okay with this, right? You've opened yourself
Mm-hmm.
up to that. So
I knew what I was getting myself into.
okay, good deal, good deal. Okay. Well, thank you for being with us tonight, Scott. Is there anything else that you want to let people know? Any messages you want to give for aspiring comic book artists or wrestlers out there?
If you're going to wrestle, take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Work out, diet. It is a huge part of wrestling. Um, it took me a couple years to figure that out, and go whole hog. Don't half-ass it.
Yep.
Same with comics. It's kind of the same message. If you're a new comic creator, you got to put the time in. It's like, yeah, life comes up, but you got to find time for this stuff. So you have to put the work in. There's no shortcuts. You got to put the work in. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. So yeah. And if you like any of this, go to accidentalaliens.com. And if either of my titles sound interesting to you, they're there. Or you could hit me up on social media. I need to talk to our webmaster about putting the second shift bundle pack up there. But if you want the bundle pack, it's $30 shipped in the US. And just hit me up on social media, scottlost@yahoo.com or @scottlost on Twitter or Instagram, facebook.com/scottlost. You could hit me up and I could get that to you. Or if you just want to check out some, just the trade or something like that, or Wanderers #1, you can go to accidentalaliens.com, pick them up there. We have our anthologies there, the 2018 and 19, and 2020. The Kickstarter will be coming up in March through April, March 1st through April 1st. So, and yeah, you could back that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being with us tonight, Scott. All
No,
right.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hopefully that was somewhat entertaining.
I think that was perfect. Okay, Scott. Take care.
All right. See you later.
Bye, everyone. Super special thanks to Scott Lost. You can check out Scott on Twitter @ScottLost or on Instagram @ScottLost. And then if you want to get him on Facebook, it's a little bit different. It's Scott E. Lost. He's got to change it up. The E is for excellence, probably. No one tells me anything. accidentalaliens.com is the site that you want to go to if you want to check out those anthologies and Scott's individual storylines. Excellent stuff, by the way. On Facebook, The Accidental Aliens, and on Instagram, Accidental Aliens. So go check them out. Why not? Special thanks, as always, to our legendary announcer, Savage C. Walnar. Great job, Savage. Couldn't do it without you. And, of course, our You Mine theme song is Demilitarized Zone by Ethan Mexell, and it sounds just like a choir of angels singing. If you want to help us out and support the show, go to patreon.com/lucidnap. I don't know why you wouldn't want to help us. You like this show, right? You can also do a small one-time donation at buymeacoffee.com/lucidnap. Or, you know what else you could do? You could go to www.lostbreadcomic.com. You can buy my comic, Lost Bread. You can buy prints. You can buy art. You can buy all sorts of stuff. Or you can commission art of your own. If there's something you'd like me to draw for you, I can do that. You just gotta let me know. I don't know unless you tell me. That's kind of how it works. Or just follow us. Yes, you can follow us on all of our social media, and also make sure that you check out our sister podcast, Creeping Wave Radio. It's pretty fantastic. It's more of an audio drama, and the plotline from You Mind ties into Creeping Wave Radio, as does the plotline for Lost Bread Comics, so definitely check those out. And you know what? Thank you so much for listening or for watching if you're on YouTube, and special thanks to The Grammarica Show, Nikki Benfield, and Neil, our Patreons, who we could not do this without. The You Mind is brought to you by Lucid Nap Productions in cooperation with a hairy old man. Thank you for listening. Bye.
How do people who make stuff up for a living make stuff up?
New York Times bestseller Jonathan Mayberry told us.
Oprah's book club favorite Sue Miller told us.
You sort of take a character and make some bad things happen.
How'd we get them to do that?
We collared them, just like at a cocktail party, except through your headphones.
Join us every Thursday for the Liars Club Oddcast.
A slightly unhinged podcast where storytellers interview other storytellers.
Available on Project Entertainment Network, iTunes, and everywhere podcasts are heard.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.